You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today and we have a special guest. Today, we have the honor talking to JD Mass. He is going to share with us his life story and everything that he does. He has an amazing website. First off, it's raceforwhat.com. We're going to learn more about what he does and his amazing story. So first and foremost, JD, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your time, man. So when it comes to where you grew up, kind of tell us a little bit about your life story. What was it like growing up in St. Louis, and how does that kind of pave the road to your story that we're going to be talking about today?
So I grew up in an area of St. Louis called U City or University City. It's the greatest place on earth when I was growing up, for sure. It was pretty much the only diverse area of St. Louis. My parents purposely wanted to raise me and my sisters around and in and around Black community. And so we happened when I was 4 years old to move next door to who became my best friend immediately, and his family. And it was grandmother, aunts, uncles, mom, and brothers of my best friend all in the same house. And so through him, and because of racial divide and so much unknown about other cultures, it was hard for me to get white friends once they knew how many Black friends I had. And I met so many of my Black friends by going to the public school, and also through my friends from next door. And so I grew up really being the kind of only white kid in the Black family households and in the community at various times in the parties and whatnot. What I noticed was that I was treated differently by the systemic society, whether it was in retail stores or by police or whatever, when I was not with my friends than I was when I was with them. So that spurred a journey for me to want to understand why did we start racism and things to that nature.
And you earned a degree in organizational psychology. Tell us a little bit about what you gained from that and how that also kind of framed what you wanted to do about it.
Well, I put something in between. I met an African Hebrew Israelite community located and based in Dimona, Israel. And I went there and I experienced an intentional community based on peace and health and wellness and a village to raise a child. And I got to experience what that was like in action, and also see the intentionality, that the intentional work that has to go into developing something like that, especially coming from such an individualistic society. So shortly after going through that and then and I was always entrepreneurial, this organizational psychology program that I went into seemed to fit what I was doing anyway. And what happened is I really got a chance to learn the psychology of developing culture, right? How does the group psychology happen? How does leadership impact it? How do our values and our visions and mission come to build a foundation for what becomes the decision making that ends up being culture? And that, along with the history that I learned in the Hebrew Israelite community and just putting together how I experienced various cultures, it helped me shape my vision for my book.
Once again, listen, on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, JD Mass. Go to his website, raceforwhat.com. You have on the website 7 steps to healing. Let's kind of dive into that a little bit. What's some of the things that our audience can appreciate when they go to the website raceforwhat.com? Because you also have books and stuff that they can get for resources, but kind of dive into the vision behind the 7 steps of to healing.
So the 7 steps are also kind of what I went through. And, when we first start to recognize something that we want change in, and maybe we either see something where we have our aha moments, or we, hit a wall and we're going through a change, we're taught so much that we are the greatest community, or the greatest society in America, that we lead with taking charge of something. So step 1 is don't take a step, because there's so much that we haven't learned in our society about other cultures, about how life works, all of these different things. And so step 1 is seek understanding. Do not take a step. Don't move. Seek understanding. And in that process, I go over, the deception of our culture and not teaching us about other cultures, the deceptive practices that made me and others believe that having less melanin in our skin, made us superior at one point, right? And so as we start to go through that, if you're going to build a system around that lie, then you have to build deception and lies into the system itself to make it appear to be true. And that's what we're untangling. So step 1 is saying, hey, I recognize I don't have the skills to make the change I want. Let's take a step back and start to gain understanding. Step 2 is to then acknowledge the harm of our culture and really dig into the psychology, the emotionalism and intentionalism behind anti-Black racism. What is really going on? Why do I hate a people that really have never been attacking towards me in the same way that my people have been attacking towards them? And so to start acknowledging the harm of anti-Black racism, as well as the harm of just a culture that developed from a place where we had a scarcity of resources in this European region. And how did we develop certain cultural aspects and behaviors based on believing that there was a scarcity, that other cultures who grew up where there was an abundance of resources, whether it's in Africa, in South America, any of these other places where there's an abundance of resources, even in the place we call the United States now, how those folks treated us differently than we treated them when we went to those lands. And so what else comes from that, whether it's trying to manipulate ourselves, whether it's trying to create fake foods and sell them off to us and keep us sick and harmful. There's a lot of harm in our culture, and it's time to acknowledge that harm. And it comes from the same people that founded racism and created such a structure. So step 2 is acknowledging the harm. Step 3 is where we start to begin the change process. And that is in letting go of the ways that we've learned, letting go of our power and privilege, letting go of our control, and competition is at the heart of everything. Right. And so hence why they call it racism. Race sounds like a competition. And so letting go of our fears of change. That's one of the most difficult things to do, is to really change our behaviors because of the fear of the unknown behind that. And so some of the letting go process also opens us up to start the change process, and then acknowledging and appreciating the value of other cultures. We barely get to learn about any other culture. We do not get to learn the truth about Black culture. We just learn that we enslaved them. We were bad. We beat them. We did this. Let's learn to appreciate and really recognize all of the contributions, as well as the fact that they have never mass retribution. It is really just about, can you finally leave us be and let go of all of this control that you have, so we can all share in this planet and the resources that are there. And so there's a value to that. There's a value to that level of humanity. And if we appreciate the value, then the cost of repair, which is step 5, is reparations, actually comes with a value to that too. And step 5 goes into a comparison of injury, physical injury. And if we do not treat that physical injury and actually put an intention to heal it, then that physical injury grows into other overcompensating injuries, and we never are actually whole, and we can't really understand the essence of life and communicating with one another and interacting with one another until we go through that process of healing. And that's going to take some intentions as well. And so once we've healed, step 6 is now we need a new mind. Whenever you go through a drug addiction program or other kind of program, right? You've acknowledged the harm, you've gone through, you've recognized you don't have the control. You can't use the same mind now to recreate something better. So we need a new mind to teach us. We need indigenous cultures and aboriginal cultures who have a connection to the planet, who have a much greater sense of a collective working together, recognizing we're connected, to lead us into something greater and learn how to serve instead of lead as less melanated people. And so that is step 6. And step 7 would be then manifesting humanity.
I appreciate the conversation we're having because, as we both know, there are different viewpoints, and I like step 4 where it emphasizes on appreciating the values, because I think if we all took a break and just kind of step back and look around and observe the contributions that all of us do, actually, it kind of goes both ways, but in today's specific focus, I appreciate that being illustrated because it's so easy to make a point finger and say, oh, look at that, and I don't like that. But it takes a little bit more effort to pause and reflect and observe what is actually going on, who is contributing.
Right. Yeah, we're such stuck in a competitive nature that we're triggered to react in a competitive manner instead of seeing that we could actually react in a collaborative manner or see some of the same humanity in others. And I talk about this across political lines. I know Trump supporters and Democrats that would give me $100 if I needed it and they had it, right? I know Trump supporters and Democrats that would give me a ride to the store if my car broke down and I needed to get there. I know Trump supporters and Democrats that would both, help me change a flat tire if I needed some assistance. There's too much that we would do as humans that we can shed our light and not think just because you vote a certain way that you reflect everything about that and that we don't have a human baseline that we still can connect on.
Yeah, I literally just spoke to a woman not too long ago on the show. I haven't released it yet, but it will be this week or weekend, I should say. And she came to the United States 20 years ago. She is the great example of living the American dream. She worked her way and got herself in an opportunity position to become her own boss, start her business. And it's like, look at that. I mean, just look at that. That's the whole facts right there in your face. You can't deny it. There's opportunity, and people don't have to look like you to succeed in this country. That's the beauty about America.
Yeah. We have great potential here if we can get past the competitive nature, to really see that there is such diversity here, and we could have such an enriched experience going back to the step 4 of really appreciating the value and being curious about other cultures.
Once again, let's not refocus radio. Talking to our guest today, JD Mass. You go to his website, raceforwhat.com. I want to talk about the resources you have, because you have a ebook, paper book, and audio book, Race for What. If you can, kind of share with the audience a little bit more additional information of what some of the things that you address in your book.
So the first half of the book is memoirs of my journey in life as it relates to my development in relationships with melanated communities, with my interactions with, racism in the systems, with my learning and experiences along the way with various groups of people, including later on in the how raising Black children and being a part of white anti-racism groups. And then the second half is the 7 steps to healing that we looked at. One of the key things I learned, and I mentioned in the memoir portion, but that really affects the 7 steps, is the definition of the word prestige. When I was with the Hebrew Israelite community, the movie The Prestige came out, and it was about a magic show, and we didn't understand why would a magic show be labeled prestige. And when we looked up the definition of the word prestige, yes, of course, it's something that we hold in high regard based on this perception of higher value. But the actual definitions originated from French and Latin terms that meant conjuring tricks and illusion. And to think about, okay, our school systems that we hold so prestigious, Yale and Harvard and all of these things, if we start to put in, the fancy homes and the high valued places and Ferraris and all these things as being ideas of prestigious groups of people representing prestigious groups of people, there's a lot of illusion to that, right? There's a lot of trickery in the fact that at these institutions, we don't learn our truth about life and how it operates. We don't learn the truth about how we formed such a culture and how other cultures have formed. And so in a magic show, it's not what you see that tricks you, it's what you don't see. And so what we don't learn is also being used to trick us. And so that was an important way for me to help approach some of the steps.
My next question for you, just out of curiosity, is if you ever receive criticism for what you do and what you're doing right now, to shed light on this, what has been your response to it? And what ways do you hope that you can reach people where they are so that they'll be open-minded to at least learn what you're saying?
So 2 criticisms. One, I hear that, you don't like yourself. You're self-hating yourself because you don't like your whiteness and things of that nature. No, the truth sets us free. And because of that, I actually I'm able to love myself very differently, just being honest with the fact that it's not white skin, it's less melanated. The fact that when I go out with my friends, I have to protect myself or I have to find shade outside, right? More so than they do. And their ability to absorb the sun is different than mine. And I just have to take different precautions because of those things. Being real with it allows me to function in life to be the best version of myself. And the other thing I hear is like that I come across either too direct or people and we're worried about the people that need to hear this. And yet sometimes you get into an argument with folks and yes, it gets really heated and then they go home and then they come back and then they go, you know what? I thought about what you said. Of course, we're reacting to holding on to these privileges or holding on to this idea of supremacy and power. Yes, there's going to be a level of, but I want to feel valuable still. And until we relearn how to feel valuable in serving one another instead of in leading one another or having things done around us as if we're the center of the universe instead of being at one with the universe. I think those are the 2 main areas where I have pushback.
This is on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, JD Maz. You go to his website, raceforwhat.com. And that's what I love about this show. I mean, the show, after 1,000+ interviews, we have interviewed all walks of life, all different shades of color. And that's what I love about this show. This show is basic premise is that everyone has a purpose. And his main mission is that Every day you have opportunity to refocus on your dreams, refocus on your goals. That's why it says because it's a continuously thing that we have to do. It's a lifestyle. We don't just focus one day and the rest of our lives is perfect. No, there's bumps in the roads and there's adversities, but there's opportunity, and that's the key right there.
Yes. Well, I appreciate it. We can learn so much from the refocusing. We can learn so much from just recognizing when we look outside beyond the buildings and the cars and the streets and the pavements, and there's life, and that life constantly is refocusing itself. The trees have to grow a certain way. The grass has to move a certain way. So a lot of times based on how we pave it and how we maneuver in it and how we come through and say, we're going to set up shop here. There's life there. And so to really still understand our connection to all of that life, as well as what's going on in the world that we've created, is important to balance and help us with the refocusing. I think there's so much example for us to be able to just get back in touch with what is really life and what is this imitation of life that we often find ourselves in.
You as an author and entrepreneur, and I like how it says on your website, and inspiring activist. I think that's very clever. What do you hope that people will be able to appreciate from your message once they get through all the assumptions of what they think it might be versus when they actually spend some time to listen to what you have to say?
My hope is that it helps untangle some of our emotional stuckness that we have, like you talked about, refocusing and just being able to take a new lens and see life a little bit differently and see kind of what is real and what is not. And also envision how much more enjoyable it will be to go through the healing process and be on the other side of such a culture that right now has the wealth in such few hands, and so much of our government is working for that wealth instead of for its people. And so how do we revalue serving one another, sharing with one another, supporting one another, caring for one another, and see that as something that's going to be so much more enjoyable than just in being in this sort of rat race that we're in right now.
You also offer speaking services. If someone is listening to this right now and they're like, man, I would love to get in touch with JD Mass and have him speak from our organization or event, what's the best way that they can get that process started?
So the website is raceforwhat, FORWHT.com, WHAT.com. The email I can be reached at is race4what@gmail.com. And my phone number I can easily be reached at as well, 314-324-1618, 314-324-1618, and race4what@gmail.com.
When you look back, when you first started this process with your brand and your books and resources, what's some of the positive feedback that you're getting from people who have a change of heart? I know you gave an example earlier, but what's some of the things that you're starting to see consistently as you continue to get on these platforms and tell your story?
I have heard people say, where I felt hopeless, I see a path towards hope now. I see or that's an interesting thing. I've never thought of approaching things that way. And that's really what it's about for me, is changing our approach to whatever the scenario is. If we approach something with wanting what's best for all of us, then we see it very differently. If we approach it for what's best for me, then we may get some instant gratification, and we may not, based on what the results are, but then we're stuck with it only being about me, and there's just so much more to life that we can all be one with. And I think a lot of people are hearing something different. I'm not just speaking about the what is the problem with racism. I'm looking at why and how, because if we change the why and the how, then we can build something greater.
But once again, true honor talking to JD Mass today on the show, I'm Refocused Radio. Go to his website, raceforwhat.com. Go get his books. Go check out his resources. And if you need him to speak, shoot him that email. We have all of the notes in the description. Like always, I want to say thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.